and welcome to Everything End of Life with me, Jason Cottrell, and guests. And I've got Debbie here with me again to help me for this intro. And the reason is because we've got a celebrant today. And that celebrant is no other than our old friend, Pauline Midwinter. You obviously remember Pauline.
I do, yes.
Because she ran a theatre company with us back in the 2000s and 10s and around about, long time ago.
Before children.
Before children, yes, right. And then we went off and got a proper job. No, I'm only kidding. That was a proper job. And she's going to tell us what it's like to be a celebrant, how she became a celebrant, and all things celebrant, either for weddings or for funerals. Do just want to pay tribute to a brilliant fella called Lee Bedow, or Bedow. I'm going with Bedow.
Okay, go with that.
I like that.
Yeah.
Because he created the music, the intro music and the outro music. And he did it in what seemed to be like 20 minutes. So he was a brilliant musician. Now, he's a voiceover artist, and he did the voiceover for the second book.
Oh, yes.
The Bag.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is of the children's adventure series books. This is a plug for my own books. So, if you want to buy it. We've got Christmas coming up, eh?
Well, you never know.
It's the first one was called The Bucket by D.J. Cottrell. And you can get that on Amazon. And there's another 3 books that follow that. There's also another book called I Want a Hippo. But, let's move on from that.
That's for smaller readers, though,
isn't
it?
It is for smaller readers, yeah. The Bucket is for kind of 7, 8-year-olds.
Meet primary school age, that one, really.
Although our neighbour, who's 90-something, said, "Oh, Jason, that's the best book I've ever read." and I said, "Yeah, but you don't get out much. You don't get out much, Pam."
But it's a good book.
Good, I'm glad. Yeah, we used to go into schools and promote it, didn't we? It was good fun. That was a lot of good fun. So he did that. He's a musician, voiceover artist. He has his own studio. So if you need voiceover work, he's the go-to guy. His name's Lee Bedow, as I say, and he's got his website is www.abbeysounds.org. So just search him up, and yeah, he's a great fella. So without further ado, this is my interview with Pauline, who, has been a celebrant for 3 or 4 years, I think. Can't quite remember. But it's a great interview, and she's bubbly. She's like opening a bottle of champagne. So without further ado, enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Everything End of Life with me, Jason Cottrell, and guests. And my guest today is Pauline Midwinter, and she's going to talk to us about being a celebrant. Hello, Po.
Hello, Jason. Nice to see you.
Yeah, well, I haven't seen you for years.
Since your birthday.
Since my birthday. Yeah. And in the intervening time, you have become a celebrant.
Yes, that's right.
So can you just give us a quick overview of what a celebrant does at a funeral, or before a funeral and after a funeral?
So you normally take the booking from a funeral director.
Okay.
They will approach me directly, ask me if I'm available on the date and the time. If I am, then I'm given what's called confirmation of details, and then I get the family contacts. I'll phone them straight away as soon as I get those details.
Yeah.
And I'll make an appointment to go and see them, either virtually or in person.
Okay, so then that's where you knock out the details of what they actually want to do.
Yes, yeah, it's much better to do it face-to-face if you can, but virtual meetings are quite common with younger audiences. Older audiences tend to prefer face-to-face.
Yeah, that'd be me.
Yeah, it's whatever suits the client. And during the initial meeting, we talk through everything about the person who's died's life.
Yeah.
So I find out everything from birth to death that they want in the funeral.
Okay.
And also, are they being cremated or buried? Are they having any music? Is there a slideshow? Are there going to be flowers? Is anybody else going to speak? Those questions are all covered during that meeting.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because when we had an interview with Lee Joshak, what he pointed out was, from Freedom Funerals, he's retired now, So it's brilliant for him. And but I don't think he can leave Colchester because too many people like him. So what he was saying was you don't have to have the Victorian-style funeral, but you can have anything you want. In that half an hour inside the Chapel of Rest, you can have almost anything.
Yes, that's right. And you're not limited to a Chapel of Rest anymore. There's so many options.
Okay.
I mean, our traditional funeral goes back way further than Victorian times. Medieval funerals had a procession and everybody wore black for even another 500 years back from Victorian funerals. And they would pay local poor people to wear black to join the procession to make the dead person look more popular. So and that was happened throughout society, not just very rich people, but yeah, they would have a traditional procession, a very traditional ceremony. What the Victorians added was that regimented mourning. You will mourn for 6 months because you're a wife or whatever.
Yeah.
You will wear black for those 6 months. So Victorians really regimented it. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I did not know that people would get paid to go to a funeral.
Yes.
I think that's a great job.
Poor people and people with physical disabilities as well, because they couldn't get work elsewhere.
Yeah.
So they could be paid to be a mourner.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's fascinating
isn't it?
stuff. Yeah. There's some really interesting books about medieval funerals and things like that. It's really...
Yeah, I think, I don't think you could really instigate that today because I don't think the Department of Work and Pensions would really go for that, would they?
It would all have to be at least minimum wage.
It would be.
And if it's PPE, the black clothes are PPE, then you have to provide it, don't you?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Anyway, all right. So
I've forgotten what the question was now.
that doesn't matter. It's okay. Right, let's just go back to how... You haven't always been a celebrant, obviously.
No. I've done hundreds of jobs over the years.
So when I first met you, we were both at university and doing performing arts.
Yes, our degree in performing arts, which was brilliant.
It was a bit of a laugh, wasn't it? And I have to point out that I got a 2-1 and you got a first degree. So I'm not jealous. I haven't held a grudge all these years, but, well done.
Thank you.
Okay. And and then we went on to run a theatre company with Daryll Tester together. And we did some really crazy things.
Lots of crazy things.
Murder mysteries, Shakespeare's.
Edinburgh Festival.
Oh, Edinburgh Fringe Festival. That was amazing.
Yeah.
Had a play. I rewrote King Lear.
Which was brilliant.
And we put it on and gave it a happy ending, which upset a few people. But it worked well. And then that kind of fizzled out after a few years. But during that time, that was, awesome. And then what tripped you into becoming... I mean, you now run a forest school.
Yes, so at the end of theatre company, one of our actors said, my daughter's school needs a drama teacher. Right. So I stepped in to do what I thought were just some workshops and ended up on the graduate training programme. And then I was a teacher for 12 years. In that time, I was still performing in amateur groups and things.
Yeah.
And then I met Richard, who then became my fiancé, who then became my husband. And when Jennifer, my first daughter, was born, my only daughter, that was a weird thing to say. When Jennifer was born...
Hang on, there's something in the fire here. You've got something to tell me.
No. When Jennifer was born, we knew we didn't want to have a christening because neither of us were religious in any way, shape or form.
Yeah.
And although my parents were both religious... Richard's parents were not, and so we wanted something that everybody would be happy to attend. And I found out that you could do a humanist naming ceremony. I didn't hire a celebrant for that because we didn't have a huge amount of money with me being on maternity leave. Yeah. So I did it myself. Just family and friends in the garden, in a big circle. I used this script I found online and I loved it. I really loved weaving those words around. And my brother-in-law Ian and Richard's cousin John played a song. They did Jennifer Juniper, but they changed it to Jennifer Midwinter. And then someone else read a poem and it was really personal.
Yeah.
And after that I said, I'd love to be a celebrant.
Yeah.
In 2008. Then...
You let it slide a bit.
Yeah, a friend of a friend did Christopher's naming ceremony for me because we wanted it to be a lot bigger.
Yeah.
And, of course, you're godparent as well.
Yes. I've not forgotten. It's all right.
So, and I wish I'd done it myself. You know, I wished I'd done that one myself. But I handed that one over to someone else. And then she said that she was thinking of training as a celebrant. And I thought, well, she might think I'm copying her if I do it now. So I let it slide a few more years.
No.
And then eventually I went, this is silly. I want to do it. And I paid for it. And I did it during lockdown.
And?
That was wedding celebrant training.
Yeah.
So online, over Zoom, for I can't remember how many days, with Humanist UK.
Yeah.
And after a year of doing weddings, I then felt confident enough, and I could afford, to pay for the next level of training, which was funerals.
Okay, so and now that's a really, I mean, it's interesting that we both started doing theatre together, and now both have, in a strange way, ended up in end-of-life care.
Yes.
So, you know, there's a play in that, I think.
Yes, well, I do matches and dispatches.
Matches and
Yeah,
dispatches.
I haven't added hatches yet to my
to
my repertoire. That would be more training.
Okay, but is that something you want to do though? As
Yeah,
well?
I'd like to do namings one day, but these training's expensive and you have to budget for it. So.
Oh no, and having teenage children is expensive as well, isn't it, for both of us? But that's fine. So you've got a website.
Yes.
I saw that today. Actually, I saw the that you got it for the weddings.
Yeah, and funerals
And
are on
funerals.
there too. Yeah.
Yeah. So that leads me into thinking: is there any competition? I mean, do you have?
Yeah, there's a huge amount of competition. Humanists UK are constantly training wedding and funeral celebrants.
Right.
You know, week in, week out, there's more people being added to it. And they're not the only trainers. There are civil celebrants
Right.
and there are registrars. So it's a massive competitive field. You have to fight for your corner of the market. And, you know, you haven't got a choice about that. You've got to market yourself.
Yeah.
It won't just come to you, you know.
I was just remembering, actually, when Debbie and I got married, they had a celebrant. We had a celebrant.
Yeah, so in Scotland, humanist weddings are legally recognised.
Yeah.
But that's not the same in England. In England, you have to go to the registrar as well.
As well.
Yeah.
Okay. I was talking to a friend who said, oh, yeah, I know a celebrant. He gets loads of work. He looks like Jesus. And he's... no, that made you laugh. And he does... Apparently, just because of his looks, he gets a lot of work, you know.
Well, certainly the way you present yourself is important. People
Yeah.
do look for a certain look in a celebrant. Some people prefer to look for a female celebrant or a male celebrant. You might want an older lady or you might want a younger person. Yeah. It's all down to the individual.
Or personal preference.
And there's a lot of research about how Gen Z pick who they choose for their celebrations.
Okay.
They want short videos and lots of pictures. They won't read the details in general.
Yeah.
So that's why we are all on Pinterest and TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and we've got a website and YouTube Shorts. You've got to do it all.
Yeah, just to keep the work coming in.
Just, to keep your name out there in the game.
Yeah, that's really tricky. I'm not sure I could do that.
Well, you can do it.
It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, but you can, for example, I don't put all the same stuff on all the platforms.
No.
So Facebook is more like a blog. It's more, excuse me, where I write in more detail because people tend to read in more detail on Facebook. Instagram is for the fantastic photos. Anything really eye-catching, colourful or moody or atmospheric. TikTok is for me talking about the celebration I've just done, how I feel it went, that kind of thing. Yeah. So something different on every platform.
I've got to say, I mean, I'm doing these podcasts and they're going out on all of the usual platforms, which is nice. But they're kind of automated. I don't really have to do much with that. I did try TikTok for a while, but my attention span just doesn't hold. That I can't.
You are Gen Z.
I don't know what that is, but yeah, and also Instagram. It's got bored really quickly. But
that's really big for weddings.
Yeah.
People who are planning weddings often use Instagram for inspiration, and it is brilliant. If you hashtag Norfolk Bride or hashtag Suffolk Bride, you'll get hundreds of ideas of places, cakes, caterers, celebrants, ring designers, dress designers, and they'll all be in the area. So it's really handy.
So for the wedding celebrant, you're almost a bit of a wedding planner.
No.
You're not? It's a different thing?
I can advise them. I can recommend
But you couldn't.
Wedding planning is a whole business in itself.
Yeah.
No, I literally just write the ceremony for the wedding. But I'm always there an hour and a half early.
Okay.
I have helped put out chairs, lay out confetti. I've put umbrellas in place. I've picked up apples off orchard floors. Whatever needs doing, I just
get stuck in there.
I just get stuck in.
So do you then get invited back to whatever happens next?
Yes, always.
And
after funerals, I'm always invited to the wakes. It's really flattering. I don't often go because I frequently only know the family member I've spoken to.
Yeah.
And then they'd be obliged to speak to me, and they need to speak to everyone who's there.
Yeah.
So I don't often go. I've been to a couple of people that I knew who died. So I've done some people who I knew. I've done their funerals.
So you know the crowd, as it were.
So I know the people who were there.
Yeah. Now we come on to the tricky question of what tends to go wrong. Is there things that go wrong with? I mean, it must be difficult for everybody in a family to want the same thing.
Totally.
So that is a bit of a tricky one for you to navigate, I'd have thought.
It can be, and because you're given this point of contact by the funeral director. So that's the person who's booked the funeral, but that doesn't necessarily. There might be multiple siblings who all want to have a say, but that person who's booked it might not give them that outlet.
Yeah.
So it's a really delicate path, and it's always important to say, who else would like to contribute? Who else is there that I can contact or that you can contact who would like to be a part of this process to make sure that I've done my part in making it open to as many people as possible?
Yeah, one of the things a friend of mine who's a priest brought up, we were talking about, I'm going to hopefully have him on, Father Rick in Colchester. And he was saying that, everybody's family's wishes can be very, very different. And it can be that, in his church, he's come across times where the whole family want to have a Catholic funeral, but the person who's dying doesn't. And it's that's a really tricky one, because when they're gone, hey, look, they don't know, they're not here.
Yeah.
And he says, I can't do that. You have to respect each individual's particular wishes, and I guess you get a bit of that.
Yeah, it's so true. One of the more recent funerals I did, before he died, he said, "You guys can do what you want because I won't be there.
Yeah,
and you can celebrate or you can sob. It's up to you. If you want to have religion, you have religion. If you don't, and that was
lovely. Yeah,
really generous. But I've had the opposite where the family member I've dealt with has been the only person who's spoken to me, and then I've stood at the lectern and the entire congregation is glowering at me,
right?
Because they didn't have any input, because this person who was the contact didn't offer out to them. So that's really difficult, and you just have to get through those. And also, if the person who's passed away wasn't very popular with their family, that's really tricky. Struggling to find nice things to say.
It happens, doesn't
it? It does, because not everyone's nice,
No.
Whenever you see the news, people die, they're always like, oh, he was a wonderful person, light of the community. But there are people who are
a total git.
Bastards to their entire family. And then when they're gone, they're a bit of a relief that they're gone.
Oh, that's a tricky
So then you
one.
just have to pick, so tell me the funny stories. Tell me when he said something really offensive, but you laughed about it.
Yeah.
Tell me when he tripped himself up with his nastiness. Let's bring out the humour and let's at least have a smile during the ceremony.
That's such a tricky one.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, touch wood. I am touching the table leg now. I haven't had funerals with technical issues.
Okay.
There's a lot that can go wrong. Curtains opening and closing at wrong times. Music being miscued.
Hang on, because when I've been to a funeral, we get that half an hour and the box stays where it is. But in some places, it rolls off behind the curtains. Is that?
Not until after the ceremony, generally.
Okay.
But you can choose to leave the curtains open.
Right.
Or to close them.
Okay.
So some people like that moment of closure.
Yeah.
But if they're noisy, if the curtains go as they close, it's really quite off-putting. So, and some people like them left open so they can say a final goodbye to the coffin. But I have never had, I know some of my fellow celebrants have had nightmares with curtains getting stuck or with music, not the right music being queued up, because that's nothing to do with us, or the music being too loud, or a lot of the things are out of the celebrant's control.
I've got to say, I mean, I'm always respectful, big, at funerals and that, but I am minded of Billy Connolly when he said, the curtain's closed. And I was just waiting for somebody to come out and say, anybody got a match? And it just cracked me up. What a brilliant comedian.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Pauline, it's been an absolute pleasure having you come and talk to us about celebrants. Is there anything we should actually know when we're engaging a celebrant which would make it easier for the celebrants?
I think you need to know what you want. So if you don't want a religious celebrant, then there are civil celebrants and humanist celebrants. So a humanist celebrant is really invested in the human being that has died.
Yeah.
And that is the focus of the whole ceremony. And you can find their details on either the Humanist website. Most areas have a network. So Norfolk Humanist Celebrants have a little network. We have our own website. And just look for someone whose face appeals to you. Look for the kind of person you feel like you could trust with that story, and phone them up. And if they don't give the right impression on the phone, you don't have to hire them. Move on to the next person.
Okay.
Find the person that fits your vibe. Everyone's different. I'm very laid back in my ceremonies, but I do exactly what people want to do.
Yeah.
And I think there's a huge amount of power in poetry at funerals. It can really summarise how people feel, but they haven't got the emotional... when you're grieving, your emotions are drained, completely drained. You haven't got the wherewithal to pick up a pen and write a poem. So use someone else's words, Go and let your celebrant help you choose readings that sum up how you're feeling, what that person meant to you. And there's some really beautiful poems out there.
I've got to say, I did actually write a poem for Tina,
Did
my sister.
you?
Yeah. Tina loved dragons.
Yeah.
But I couldn't have read it out. Debbie had to read it out because both Sarah and I were in bits, She was sobbing away and Rachel was sobbing away, and but Debbie, consummate professional. If you remember, she came out as Don Pedro when one of our actors bogged off because he had a hissy fit, and she came out holding the script, and everybody just believed she was this 57, 58-year-old, Venetian guy.
Army general.
Army general, that's right. Yeah, okay. So she kept it together, but squeezed my hand really when she came back to the pew.
Yes.
But it's so emotionally charged.
It is, and it's amazing. You watch people through the ceremony, they come in quite calm, and then they go through that terrible release of emotions that is so necessary that they might have been holding in. Yeah. And then you watch them walk out and you see that their shoulders have sunk a few inches and they're ready to move on, and it's so important. It's almost a shame that there has to be that kind of 2-week gap, that all the machinations have to happen in. Yeah. Because if it could be a bit shorter, then people could get that relief a bit quicker.
Well, interestingly, in the Muslim culture, it's got to be within a few days.
Yeah.
So, every culture is different. We're talking, probably we're saying that we are talking from a kind of a white British point of view.
Yes.
Because different cultures cover this a lot.
Totally. And ours is all legal things, it's got to have the doctor's death certificate before it can go to the funeral home, before the funeral director can engage the celebrant to write the ceremony, to book the funeral home. And the crematorium or the church. It's a huge amount for people to organise. And I quite often speak to people on the phone and they're feeling quite lost.
Yeah.
And you just have to just be there for them. And
I found that because we lost a few this year, it comes at you in waves, and then you're okay, and then something really silly will just trip you off, and you're floods, whatever.
Yeah,
so,
that's completely my experience too. It's like a stone dropped in a pond, and at the beginning the ripples are really close together, so your grief is really intense, and then as the ripples get further apart, you still get those intense emotions, but they're longer apart.
Yeah.
But I still cry.
That's a lovely way of calling it. Yeah, I love that.
still cry about my mum now, and it's been
Yeah.
a few years since she went, but
Yeah.
you've got to let it out. It's so important.
I mentioned Sarah. My daughter. I'm probably going to have her as a guest because being 17. I mean, I'm 61 for crying out loud. I've seen a few.
You don't look a day over 50.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you. I'll take that. I just iron my face every morning. That's it. It makes it look good. But definitely, I think, she's quite keen on coming and talking to us about what it's like for her, because she went off the rails a bit for a few months there because it was so intense. Anyway, what is your website address?
Midwintercelebrant.co.uk.
Hey, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And available 24 hours a day. No, I'm kidding. It's not 24 hours a day, but...
No, it's not.
Phone calls at 3 o'clock in the morning. Most bloke on a podcast said that you were available anytime.
Yeah, no.
So best to email first then, I think.
Phone me. I've got a specific phone for my celebrant work, so when it's off, it's off.
Yeah. But it's normally 9 to 5 sort of thing, is it?
Yeah, roughly. Yeah, but I'm
roughly.
very happy to talk in the evenings to people because they might still be working.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even through their griefs. Not all workplaces are as sympathetic to the grieving process, are they?
No. Oh, listen, it's been an absolute joy to see you again.
I could talk for hours.
I know. I said goodbye about half an hour ago. I think.
Sorry.
That's all right. It's my fault. We haven't seen each other for ages. So, right. Well, thank you very much for coming along.
Oh, you're very welcome.
And I'm just looking for the little button that says listen in. And if you like it, you can email djcottrell@hotmail.com. That's with 1 T and 2 L's. Or go to the Facebook page, or, leave a comment anywhere you like. So, thanks for listening, and thank you, Pauline.
Thank you.
So, Celebrants Explained. I mean, I think that was a pretty good explanation of what a celebrant does, how they do it, how they're contactable. They will all have websites, I have no doubt. So, thank you very much, Pauline. That was an amazing interview. My next interview is a little bit different. It's from a lady in Chicago who's a nurse practitioner called Valerie Probsfeld.
So how did Valerie get in touch?
Okay, well, she saw the podcast on Spotify, and there's a whole community of podcast support out there. She thought it might be a good idea for her mothers, because she has a podcast with a video which supports mothers, her being a mum, and she supports them spiritually, mentally, and in all sorts of ways. She has some amazing interviews and interviewees. So she asked me to tell her a bit about myself, and we discussed all sorts of different things about death, including legacy.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I'm a better interviewer than interviewee, I think.
I think it's always difficult to talk for that length of time and answer people's questions when you don't quite know what's coming up, definitely.
Do you know what's funny? You can probably hear that there's a little bit of squeaking in the background. It's our Cocker Spaniel who wants to come into the room, and we just said no, so she's going to give us a bit of grief, so just ignore that. But yeah, there's things I always want to say, I wish I'd said such and such, particularly with legacy. I wanted to look at what kind of legacy we give our children in terms of how we bring them up, and looking at what clubs we get them to go to and what skill sets we help them with, so that sort of thing.
Do you think you'd have answered that question differently if you'd have had time to think about it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Val did give me a few questions, heads up on the questions, but I didn't really think that one through, and I think that's why I didn't answer it as well, I think, as I probably could have done. But it tells you all about me. So if you want to know about your host and what I do, then there you go. Valerie's up next. Thanks very much for listening. If you can follow, subscribe, do all the usual bits and pieces, that'd be great. Thanks very much. Bye now.